Welcome to Locked Up and Uncorked. Today, we're talking about La Belle Époque. La Belle Époque is the period that is conventionally dated from the end of the Franco-Prussian War in 1871 to the outbreak of World War I in 1914. It took place under the French Third Republic, which began in 1870. La Belle Époque is really a period that's characterized by a lot of optimism, or what us French we call Joie de Vivre. It's also a time that's marked by regional peace, economic prosperity, and technological, scientific, and cultural innovations, with, of course, Paris as its epicenter. By 1871, the Franco-Prussian War was over, and the Third Napoleon had fallen along with the Second Empire, and finally the monarchy had been abolished once and for all. So a new political structure called the Third Republic was established, which finally institutionalized the revolutionary promises of liberté, égalité, fraternité. The Industrial Revolution, which was now in full swing, offered never-seen-before opportunities for the attainment of wealth. The enjoyment of prosperity was made even more enjoyable by the advances of science, technology, and of course the railways, which linked all the major cities of Europe. It was during the Belle Époque that champagne became an obtainable luxury for a substantial segment of the population rather than just a handful of rich people, and that not just in France but throughout the world. By 1874, champagne, the legendary brut created by Louise Pommery, was enjoying its love affair with the world as tastes were moving away from sweet to dry. And as we've seen today, brut represents about 95% of champagne production. French imperialism was at its prime. Champagne was thriving, and the Belle Époque was really its golden age. Firmly embedded into popular culture, champagne became part of French national identity. The Parisian bourgeoisie, or the so-called nouveau riche, became increasingly influenced by the habits and fads of the city's elite social class, which was known as le tout Paris, all of Paris. Le Moulin Rouge became the undisputed palace of the Belle Époque, with La Goulue as its reigning queen of the French cancan, who ultimately became the enduring image of the Belle Époque. The bar at the Folies Bergeres also gained tremendous attention. La Belle Époque was a time of big dreams and unlimited possibilities. It was the time when world-renowned establishments and institutions, now Parisian Landmarks, saw the light. In 1875, Palais Garnier, the new home of the opera, was completed. In 1898, l'Hôtel Ritz opened its doors. And in 1889, the Eiffel Tower was built to serve as the grand entrance to the World's Fair held in Paris. And of course, champagne was the wine that was served when it was unveiled to the world. But Champagne's temple was a famous restaurant that was located at 3 Rue Royale in the 8th arrondissement called Maxim. A historically ranked landmark now, the restaurant has become a symbolic place of Art Nouveau. Opened in 1893 by a former waiter named Maxime Gaillard, Maxime was arguably Paris' most exclusive restaurant and also the most imperative meeting place for numerous international celebrities who were always seen with the flute or a coupe of champagne at hand. While the flute was not completely abandoned at the end of the 19th century, the coupe gained preference since it had made its debut in 1830. La Belle Époque is the time when champagne, with its distinctive pop of the cork and bubbly effervescence, became the epitome of the good life. If Paris was truly the center of the Belle Époque, champagne was its superstar. On the fashion side, exotic feathers and furs were more prominently donned than ever before. Haute couture was invented in Paris, where fashion finally began to move in a yearly cycle. From the early 1900s, champagne advertising took on modern symbolism. Another thing that characterized the Belle Époque was le grand geste, the tendency to do something and let people know about it on a large scale, basically publicity. And the man that mastered that skill to a T was someone named Eugène Mercier. The young founder was just 20 years old when he established his own champagne house in Épernay. With a succession of technical accomplishments and bold publicity campaigns, he followed a very non-conformist vision. Basically, he wanted to make his wine known and appreciated by everyone. So to highlight his labors, Eugène Mercier took advantage of all opportunities that were available at the time, including world fairs, railways, and the cinema. He is actually the first one to have created an advertising film, which he called The Making of Champagne from the Grape to the Glass, which was made by Eugène Mercier with the help of the legendary Lumière brothers. It is unarguably the world's first advertising film. To get people talking about his champagne, Mercier created a cathedral of champagne, which was a cask that's known to be the world's largest wine barrel with the capacity of about 75,000 bottles. Although the cask was overshadowed by the main attraction, which was the Eiffel Tower, it did garner loads of attention at the 1889 Exposition Universelle. Paris hosted the last World Fair of the century. And Eugène Mercier came up with new ideas of bringing his champagne to public attention. He basically organized trips above Paris in a Mercier-branded hydrogen balloon with great commercial success. Over 10,000 Parisians discovered Paris in this captive balloon that had his brand name painted in massive letters that could be seen from the ground. It also became the first advertising medium of its kind. Finally, when the fair officially closed its gates, a ceremonious flight from Paris to Épernay was organized. The journey started in fabulous weather, but near Épernay, it changed for the worse. So after 4 hours and immense difficulties, they finally landed in a small village far from the Belgian border. The border police evidently inspected the balloon and then found 6 bottles of champagne. So the pilot was fined for the illegal importation of alcohol. But Eugène Mercier couldn't care less. He's quoted as saying, "This was the cheapest advertising I've ever run." The media attention about this accidental adventure was actually less expensive than the price of an ad. Ultimately, Eugène Mercier succeeded at making champagne accessible to more people than ever before. But he also is a man that absolutely recognized the importance of publicity and took the field of PR, as we've seen, to new heights. What he basically did was lay the foundation for a modern concept of marketing and publicity, which obviously continues to this day. During the Belle Époque, ads for champagne often featured modern marvels that dazzled the growing middle class. Champagne also became of order at ship launches and on transatlantic voyages. Before a ship's maiden voyage, it was common for a dignitary to christen the vessel by breaking a bottle of champagne for good luck. But in 1912, one ship skipped this whole ceremony. You might have guessed which one it is. The Titanic. As champagne completely embedded itself into pop culture, production continued to become more efficient. Production had increased from 300,000 bottles at the close of the 18th century to 28.5 million bottles by the close of the 19th century. Mechanization and solutions to breakage, basically bottles exploding, paved the way for such a large-scale increase in production. Champagne sales also enjoyed a boost in the late 19th century thanks to the creation in 1882 of the Syndicat du Commerce des Vins de Champagne, which is now called Union des Maisons de Champagne, to protect the name champagne. Basically, authentic champagne fought to keep its identity on a legislative level. So the union prosecuted anyone who misused the name champagne, whether in France or abroad. At the close of the 19th century, so during the Belle Époque, what we noticed in Champagne is that power shifted from landowners to négociants, who had the capital to actually invest in the production of champagne. We also witnessed the refinement of champagne production, making it clearer with a better balance as well. The scientific and industrial revolutions allowed Champenois to develop the know-how and technology to begin mass producing. In 1884, a Belgian inventor named Armand Walfart patented a new method of disgorgement that was called à la glace. Basically, à la glace is the method where the deposit is first frozen in the neck of the bottle by plunging the neck into a refrigerated tank of brine at a constant temperature of around minus 25 degrees Celsius. This creates a 4 centimeter long ice plug in which the sediment is trapped. After several minutes, the bottle is turned upright and the cap is removed. So in the end, the pressure drives out the stopper plus the ice plug with the deposit trapped inside it. This was truly a revolutionary discovery because till then, disgorgement was done à la volée. So, as I've said before, during La Belle Époque, the economy was booming and prosperity was expanding. So you had, automobiles on the road, men and women were obsessed with fashion and the arts, and urban sophisticates took food and wine seriously. With the new century came advances in communications, travel, medicine, science, technology, food, infrastructure, as well as, broader and more solid markets. Ultimately, and sadly, the end of the Belle Époque came with the First World War in 1914. But La Belle Époque will forever be remembered as the golden age of Champagne, and the time during which, at last, Champagne became French. That's it for now. Join me next time. Until then, remember, life without champagne bubbles is flat. So make it pop. Cheers.